to EdTalks, your go-to podcast for the latest insights and trends in education and learning and development. I'm your host, Inna Horvath, a learning strategist at Elai, and joining me today with her brilliant case study is Tamara Perminova, a talent development head in SkyUp Airlines. Tamara held various HR positions, growing professionally from HR trainee to head of HR operations, obtaining wide HR experience in Ukraine and abroad, including global roles in L&D and as HR VP. She's a certified interviewer, assessor, facilitator, and trainer. Hi, Tamara. It's wonderful to see you today.
Hi, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So today we have a truly transformative episode for you. We are diving deep into the journey of transitioning from offline to online learning within the global airline company, discussing the initial challenges, strategies, cost-effective tools, and best practices to maintain engagement and effectiveness, as well as conducting valid training without being an expert and motivating knowledge sharing in SkyUp Airlines. So we've got a lot of things to discuss, but let's start from something that we always start with. These are some rapid fire questions that we ask each and every guest of ours, and we are summarizing the answers by the end of the season. Is that okay?
Sure, let's go.
Great. So first things first, what book or a resource can you recommend on L&D or educational topics?
I'll start with a book. It's one of the latest ones that I've read. It's called Design for How People Learn, written by Julie Dirksen. And I recommend it because it's very fun, which might sound surprising, even though it's a nonfiction book. It's written in a great structure with lots of pictures and visuals supporting the learner.
Okay, so next question. Who do you recommend to follow and invite to this podcast from L&D experts?
Vyacheslav Rudnitsky from Savvy. We translated the book that I've mentioned earlier together in a small project team, and I know that Slava is doing a lot for building L&D community in Ukraine. So these are the ones that first come to my mind.
Could you share a memorable failure or a setback in your L&D journey, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, was a tricky one for me to think of whilst preparing. I guess implementing English learning in a big company was one of the hardest tasks that I think never succeeded properly, because your success as a learner depends so much on your internal motivation that whatever the company does, it will never be effective unless you really find time and resources for your learning. And during the past 14 years and more, in a big international company where I used to work, I worked on this task both within a local market and on a global level. And I believe it never succeeded that much. At that times, we didn't have as many online resources as now exist. For example, we have Preply now, English Dom, and other digital resources. But before COVID times, everybody wanted to learn face-to-face in a group setting, or to have some tasks and a tutor personally. And again, it's quite a difficult task to find a perfect match. So in terms of the outcomes, I wouldn't say they were too successful, but in terms of my learning journey, I think it was a very important insight that the learner's success depends first of all on his or her own internal motivation. And in some cases, there is nothing the company can do to facilitate that. You invest a lot of resources on a company level, but they won't give you a good return on investment in a case when there is no motivation.
Okay, moving on. What question must be asked on a job interview for L&D specialists?
First of all, I'm a fan of competency-based interviews, so I would definitely ask to describe a situation that happened in a candidate's life in their own experience, and I would ask them maybe to describe the recent skill that they've acquired themselves. So for me, it's very important that L&D specialist is learning herself constantly, like a lifelong, life-wide learning, continuous learning, and examples of something new that they've learned quite fast, or learned to do quite fast in their job with all other responsibilities, finding resources to invest in their own development.
Yes, yes, it's a great one. And last but not the least, if you had to give just one piece of advice for someone who is just starting their career in L&D, what would that be?
I guess it's connected to the previous question. For me, it's learn something new every day and like find time for that. Book your schedule, your busy working calendar, your busy daily whichever calendars you use, planners, to-dos, so on and so forth. Book the time for your own development. Let it be one page of a book, let it be one new resource, one new tool, Microsoft, anything, but just learn something new every day. That way you will grow yourself, and you will always have something to share with your learners or colleagues.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good one. Okay, so thank you for your answers. Now it's time to go to our main topic, main agenda that we have planned today, and we are packed with wonderful topics. But let's start from the main one, which is transitioning from offline learning to online within 2 short years. So the reason it's mind-blowing for me, because I understand the scale. SkyUp is a global company with not the easiest topics to transition to online learning. And my first logical question, of course, would be probably about the reasoning behind it, right? So why did you? But I think it's super logical to everyone who is listening to us that first we had COVID, then we had war. And in general, if you look at the tendency, many organizations are transitioning to fully online learning, right? And here we can talk a lot about challenges and strategies. But I would love to start with just your story, right? So how did you face the challenge, and could you describe the initial stages of the project that you were given to?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I joined the company during the COVID times at the end of 2021. And at that time, of course, company already transitioned some of the learning into online. Not too many, though, I should say, because in terms of aviation, there are many training programs, courses that require face-to-face. There are some practical cases that, and we call it evidence-based training, that you have to undertake regularly. It's a recurrent and continuous training for aviators that usually happens within a certified aviation training center. And usually they need some resources, some machinery, even like, for example, a mock-up of an airplane for our flight attendants, or specific equipment for our pilots that they undertake their training at. Or, for example, for our technicians, we need to use the tools and to work with an engine and so on and so forth. So, of course, still lots of training experience happens offline. But in terms of soft skills, or for example, in the aviation industry, there are some sort of soft skills training, for example, human factors or crew resource management, that do not require some special equipment or technology, and they can happen, and are actually quite effective even in the online setting. So when I joined, the company already had a mixture of both, but during the past 2.5 years, we introduced several online systems. For example, our crews are using it's an American system called CPAT. It's a computer-based training provided both from the Boeing, for example, the aircraft that we are using, or designed, developed by our own experts, and integrated with the CPAT. At the same time, the rest of the company, as we work together with the SkyUp Airlines and join up tour operator, and there is a big headquarters office management and linear staff that also support both of the companies. We are using a Ukrainian system, Smart HCM LMS. We've also started to build our onboarding processes, basic information about the company, some basic soft skill training, like presentations and online courses about our corporate values, competencies, how to set your goals. We've built training for, let's call them newcomers to tourism or newcomers into aviation. When you come from a different industry, like in my case, you have to start learning from the beginning, even including like abbreviations, for example, or key legislation that manages this industry. And without this knowledge, you won't succeed, and you won't be quick in your onboarding process. So yeah, we started to build our online learning experience on specific programs. But another challenge for me was, like you mentioned, the people were not used to it, and still, I think this it still exists, the theory that online is not as effective as offline. It's harder to engage people into, it's harder to track and monitor their progress, their participation, and so on and so forth. So we also faced lack of competencies even using Microsoft 365. And this is what we did in the beginning. During the past 2 years, we had a big learning program together with our partner, Smart Business, teaching our managers first to work with Microsoft tools, and then recording online short learning courses for the rest, the linear stuff, to know how to use basic Microsoft tools, because they help them to have effective meetings, to be quick in managing their tasks, managing multitasking, doing projects, and so on and so forth. And the last but not least, what I'm very proud of is the online program that we've designed and started to conduct. I can't even calculate how many programs like that we had, but we introduced online training program for the trainers, for instructors. Again, in aviation, you have to be a certified instructor in order to conduct a training. And many of them were certified, had great experience, but they didn't have enough knowledge of online tools, how they can do their job in an online environment. So we created a Train the Trainer course with online instruments as an additional module. It lasts for 3 days, and we teach them not only Microsoft tools, but also different online boards, graphs, how to, like, Mentimeter, different quizzes, questionnaires, and so on and so forth, so that their training could be as lively as possible, as engaging as possible.
Yeah, sounds fascinating. And for just a couple of minutes, you mentioned such a diverse and broad spectrum of trainings, of the topics themselves, and starting from, just like you mentioned, hardcore Microsoft, right? And what is also interesting, if you check the LinkedIn Learning statistics, the most popular course out there in Eastern Europe is still Microsoft Excel. So, yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that's interesting that we are also talking about technologies like AI and so on and so forth, but still the demand is that sometimes we have to start from the basics and then slowly build up.
Exactly.
And in terms of the airline industry, first question that pops into my mind that I have to ask is, of course, that you mentioned some of the topics are impossible to conduct online, right? And I can imagine some technologies like VR and AR, but I also imagine that it's super expensive to organize this kind of training. So in terms of cost efficiency, what was your approach to conduct trainings that are harder to conduct online? It's not enough to use, let's say, Mentimeter or just a webinar and turn on your camera about the topic.
I guess the first step, what we did, we analyzed what are the mandatory training courses, instructional courses that our aviators have to take, both initial and recurrent. We've created a huge matrix in order for us as a corporate university, first of all, to understand what are those topics that we have to cover and who are the providers that provide them both in Ukraine and abroad. we started to look for some providers abroad again, because most of our staff left the country, or we evacuated them, or voluntarily, of course, they found new places to live. But the company operates fully in a hybrid way. And so we found a lot of new providers that could help us with this training abroad, not in Ukraine, but outside. And for some of the training courses that are still mandatory to be offline, we conduct them offline. If there is some part that can be done online, like a pre-work, for example, or some theory that they can undertake before going to, I don't know, like train on a mock-up, as I mentioned, we do that online. We trained our instructors, as I mentioned, to conduct this by themselves with using online tools. We are not using VR or AR yet, which is still my dream, but you're fully right, it's quite expensive. But we signed some very good contracts with several providers that provide us with like a pass, with a limited number of passes, which our aviators can use on a monthly basis to undertake the regular training that does not require offline setting.
See, you mentioned during our first conversation, you mentioned something like, well, we've had minimum resources and maximum ambitions. And you've mentioned several times that I could see it in your eyes, but the pride of doing something which matters. And you mentioned about the vast employee engagement. So in terms of online learning, this is something which is much harder to achieve. What's your approach with that?
We have regular communications from our corporate university, and we use them both as a promotional communications. So we announce ahead of time that we're going to have some training and it's open for registration. We select groups that we want to pilot some new training with, using for example, a form where they assess their current skills, what they are lacking, and why they're interested in this or that training. We also, during these 2 years, we've built our own talent development website. It's a part of our internal communication space, like a internal portal. And we are telling about ourselves. So we explain what our corporate university does, who represents it, the faces behind, let's say, all the processes and SLAs that we have, how you can request the training. We automated this process during the past 2 years. It's not via an email now, but we have a Jira training request form, and we built a policy explaining the whole process. If you, as an employee, want to undertake some training, which steps you have to take, how much time it takes, who approves each steps, and what are the prerequisites and the documents required within. So I'm really proud of our internal communications. We work very close with the internal communications and PR teams. We also use our social media to promote our corporate values, the trainings that we run regularly, and so on and so forth. So I would say, shortly speaking, it's constant communication, regular communication, internally and externally, engaging employees to keep their interest in the programs. So if it's a mandatory training, you don't have to help them raise their motivation, right? Because they know that if they undertake it, if they not take it, they will not be able to fly or work with aircrafts, with tools, so on and so forth. But if it's a nice to have, some additional training, soft skill training, like a time management skills, for example, or I don't know, empathetic communication, something like that. Of course, you have to promote the training. And we also did a lot during these 2 years to build a continuous learning culture. It's part of our corporate culture, I should say, and our managing board supports us. They also try to be role models. They come to our training, they give their own speeches, or they show their own examples how they use that tool, or do this thing or that, and we feel this support, and I think it transforms the organization top to bottom.
Approach.
I hope
Yeah.
I answered.
Yes, yes. So for me, I would say that the main takeaway is firstly, prepare quality, well conducted and thought of mandatory training, so your learners already know what to expect from you. Secondly, it's communication, right? And last but not the least, probably the most important is the support of the organizational leaders. And this is something which I, to be honest, can hear about each and every successful learning culture, that firstly it comes top to bottom approach, and the learners, the employees can see the involvement and they can understand the value, right? And it also is connected to the communication, because I believe that I love the phrase that you mentioned, we are working very closely with our marketing units. I feel that it's not that common that L&D works with marketing unit, and it's not that common that marketing works for the internal reasons, not for the just advertising their companies, sources, product, whatever. Could you tell me, I'm very curious about this topic, are there any lessons drawn that L&D should take from the marketing communication style, and just any secrets aligned there? What do you think?
Definitely. I think one of the most important ones is the reason behind. My favorite question is why? What for? Why are we doing this? Why do you have to come to this training? What will you take away as an insight for you, as a new skill, changed behavior, and so on and so forth. So in terms of communications, it's the answer to this question that must be within the storyline, that must be very clear. What's in it for me, right? Why I have to invest my time into this. And I think that in our modern times, it's very important because everyone is so busy and there is so much information around in various channels.
You mentioned that I know how to conduct a valid training without being an expert. And this is something that is certainly expected from us. And it's a part of the job, definitely. But I feel that especially for the starters, it's something that they're most likely challenged with. Because, I'm an LLT expert, I have no clue about aviation, right? So what tips would you give to this?
I will start with a good example. Many years ago, with my previous employer, we've conducted a series of selling excellence training. There were different namings to the program, but basically it's selling skills for those who sell the products. I've never sold anything, I think, in my life. I always fail at trying to sell something. And for me, at that time, it was quite a stressful experience, but such a rewarding experience. And I learned a lot that it matters who you do this with. So if there are experts, truly subject matter experts involved in the process of creation, your material, your content will be relevant for the experts. Of course, reading the material, learning it, you will still not be a bestseller if you don't sell in your daily life. But we did it in pairs, in couples, and we co-facilitated. That's my favorite term now. That's my favorite style of conducting a training. It's so much easier when you have a partner, when you have a shoulder next to you, and if your experience differs, if your knowledge is different, it's like a life partner. You like in a couple, you supplement each other, you complement each other, sorry, and you become stronger as a team. So during that experience, there was a selling expert and an HR expert, and we split the topics among us. We did different practical exercises together, and we would even split what I'm giving feedback on and what he or she is giving feedback on. And the feedback from participants was awesome, amazing. They loved the program. They also felt that we didn't lecture. And that's my second idea. It's a third again. So engage expert developing the content, engage someone to be your co-facilitator, being an expert in a topic that you're giving. But you as L&D are usually much stronger in terms of facilitation methods, moderation, asking questions, giving feedback, organizing groups, right, engaging audience, and so forth. But in the method of facilitation, you do not lecture. I don't like lectures. We had those in universities, right? But you moderate this discussion. You take the group experience, group thinking, you split it into individual ideas, you brainstorm, and so on and so forth. There are so many methods that you can use to take this group experience and enrich your program. And you don't have to, it's much easier. You don't have to be an expert and know everything, know how, but you facilitate this discussion. And if you have a co-facilitator as an expert in some specific technical topic or just some other theme that you are not too good at, you combine in a very good couple, let's call it like that, couple of trainers.
Yes, yes. Well, my also perspective is, since we are at Elai platform, right? I've also had to conduct an e-learning, to prepare an e-learning, and once we had this, technical training where you need to just explain some terms and show something on the website, and that was long before AI was even a conversation. And well, what I had to work with was like hours of these screencasts where someone narrates in a very, very slow manner. And it was, of course, impossible to watch, listen to, we're not talking about learning from here. So now there are so many other options. And in terms of AI generated video, it's also something that you might find in handy, because you mentioned you use a lot.
Exactly.
Right? What's your take on that?
Really liked using Elai, by the way. We are considering using artificial intelligence for making avatars and video for our regular courses. For example, in terms of our competencies program or our onboarding material, we tried to use Elai and some other AI technologies to compare how will they look like in terms of avatars, how will they speak. And again, as you mentioned, not everybody is given a gift of being a good speaker, or it's not even about public speaking for me. It's being able to explain difficult things in simple terms. Not everybody can do it, right? It comes with experience as well. But this is what Elai can help with. And it's much more fun, I think, even if it's not a real person that you know. But I know that some AIs can also like do a prototype of your face, of your expression. So we tried those two. And we liked it. I liked the sound and the video much more than my own voice with, a monotone explanation of all the competencies and values that we have. So definitely.
Also, in terms of engagement and time efficiency, this is something to leverage in 2024 for sure, just so you can spend more time on topics like creating the continuous culture of learning that you mentioned, that you have on such a deep level developed. And just last question. You've also mentioned that you have, well, firstly, continuous culture of learning is something that you've been working on for the last several years, and it also involves knowledge sharing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned again in this respect as well that you managed to achieve quite a high level of employee engagement. So what's your secret? When we are talking about hybrid remote workplaces, it's quite hard to establish communities where knowledge sharing is a thing, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Again, still work in progress, but I guess as everyone working on something, we always expect something more, something faster and better. But when I look behind and analyze these couple years that we had, I see the progress definitely. As I mentioned that, first of all, we've created this talent development site where also employees can read more and they can request a training. We haven't had this before. I know that in many companies where they have quite a big sophisticated learning management systems, it's much easier because then again, you can use artificial intelligence to suggest to employees a tailor-made learning for them. But we're just in the process of building our online courses, like an online university, moving, as we've started to talk today, from offline to online. So for me, number one is a good platform ready now, available to all, like a shop where they can come and read and take, some useful knowledge for them at this point of time, without waiting for their manager to come and tell, or for their buddy to help with, or for some training that happens once in half a year. So having a platform, an LMS, whatever it is, a portal, or a subscription to Coursera or LinkedIn Learning, if employees have enough good level of English, so on and so forth. Number two, yes, this role modeling from above. Another thing, social learning, and there was a survey that proved that we learn much better in a social when it's a social learning, when we have somebody to think with, think together, discuss with, ask questions, have this coaching trios or whatever. Because if you learn as a solo, right, one-on-one with your computer, there's no human touch. No artificial intelligence, I think, yet can replace a truly professional coach or a mentor. So it is very important that we have these social groups. And what an idea that we came from, again, it's coming from lack of resources, I guess, but we understood that as a corporate university, we cannot cover all our employees with the knowledge they need now. But we can teach the teams, we can facilitate the discussions among themselves. We can give an example, like we do in our People and Transformation team. We've started to have these regular knowledge sessions, and we started from ourselves first. Everybody who attended some kind of conference or training or read a book or whatever, got some new learning, they come and they share in a very non-formal way. We do not require to prepare a presentation or practical exercises. Just come and share, like lunch and learn, some companies have, or a cooler talk or whatever, coffee time, but with a task on learning something new. But then we decided, why don't we invite people from other departments, experts? And we are learning so much about different company processes, opportunities, even benefits that we didn't know that much about until we invited this expert to come and tell our team. And you can raise questions, and it's a very informal conversation where you get to meet people, informal discussion, very fun. And I love it. And so we recommend this to other departments. We, again, want to communicate about this more in our corporate university communications, internal comms and promotions. And again, even conducting some training. I don't have to conduct a training on project management. I'm not certified. I don't perceive myself as such an expert. I can be a good team lead maybe, but not a project manager if I never managed a project by myself, right? But there are so many people in the organization that did that. They did their own lessons learned. They understand what capabilities are required. They can, in simple terms, explain stakeholders map, risk analysis, and I don't have to go and read the PMP, the whole book to understand that. So I think it's a very natural thing, but we have to facilitate it as L&D because everybody's busy and they won't have time maybe, or maybe desire to do this. Again, sometimes it's a matter of motivation, and there has to be something in the company that supports this knowledge sharing. Without it, the initiative might die, as it often happens with like idea boxes and stuff like that.
You mentioned motivation, and that's a huge question for me. How do you motivate speakers to come up and share their experience?
First of all, we tell them that they will practice their own public speaking, so they will develop themselves. And I truly believe that the person who knows the subject best is the someone who teaches this subject, not just read about it and practice it daily. You have to tell somebody else. You have to teach someone to be an expert in that. So we motivate them like that. Of course, for example, flight attendants who are trainers, we have a financial motivation because this is what they do when they do not fly. So for them, it's important that they earn some kind of salary, let's call it like that, working hours while they train. But for the management level, we expect them to do this. We think it's important because, as I mentioned, they have to be the role models. And also very often I use the message that, person responsible for the budgeting, for example, it's in their interest that everybody knows how to do the budget properly. And you have to come and teach and explain and ask and answer questions, right? Only then you will know for sure that, okay, HR department knows how to do the budget. They are my right hand or left hand or whatever. So these are the motives that we find for them.
Yeah, it was an extremely interesting conversation. Thank you, Tamara, for your insights. And that brings the end of our another insightful episode of EdTalks. We hope that you found today's discussion on transitioning from offline to online learning and as enlightening and inspiring as I did. Remember, wherever you're seasoned, professional, or just starting your journey in L&D, there are always new strategies, tools, and best practices to discover. Huge thanks again to our guest Tamara for sharing your invaluable experience and advice. It was a pleasure to have you as our guest.
It was my pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to follow Elai on social media for more episodes, as well as discover the next level powerhouse for educational content. Until the next time.
Thank you so much. Bye.